My father made me swear to hate Rome before I was old enough to understand what Rome was. I am Hannibal Barca. History remembers me as the man who crossed the Alps with elephants, the general who humiliated Rome, one of the greatest military commanders to ever live. But that's not how I remember my life. I remember the cold, the hunger, the friends I buried beneath alpine snow before we ever reached Italy. I remember winning the greatest battle of my life, only to discover it still wasn't enough. Because history celebrates my victories, it rarely tells you what they cost. So, let me tell you what it was really like. Because trust me, it absolutely sucked to be Hannibal Barca. I wasn't born into peace. I was born into unfinished business. When I was a boy, Carthage had already fought Rome once and lost. The war had taken ships, cities, money, and something far more dangerous: pride. My father, Hannibal Barca, refused to accept that defeat. To him, Rome wasn't just another rival. Rome was a debt waiting to be collected. Ancient historians tell us that before leaving for Spain, he made me swear an oath: never be a friend to Rome, whether those exact words were spoken. No one can say for certain. But one thing is undeniable. Hatred of Rome shaped my childhood. Long before it shaped my destiny, other boys inherited farms, some inherited businesses. I inherited a war, and wars have a habit of asking children to grow up far too quickly. Spain became my classroom, not one with teachers, one with swords. While Rome recovered from one war, my family built something new: an army, a kingdom, a second chance. I learned quickly that battles weren't won by bravery alone. They were won by preparation. Food mattered, roads mattered, morale mattered. An army marches on its stomach long before it marches on glory. By the time I took command, I wasn't chasing adventure. I was preparing for the only contest that had ever mattered: Rome. The problem was, Rome had been preparing too. They had more soldiers, more allies, more money, more ships. If I fought them the way everyone expected, I would lose. Which left me with only one option: do something no sane commander would ever attempt. Let's get one thing straight. Crossing the Alps wasn't bravery. It was desperation. Rome expected me to attack by sea. They had the stronger navy. If I sailed, they'd meet me on their terms. And fighting Rome on their terms was a wonderful way to become a footnote in history. So I chose the option that sounded completely insane: march an army over mountains that many believed were nearly impossible to cross. With around 50,000 soldiers, thousands of horses, and 37 war elephants. Even some of my own officers thought I had lost my mind. Looking back, I'm still not entirely convinced they were wrong. The enemy wasn't Rome. Not yet. It was the mountain itself. The higher we climbed, the thinner the air became. The paths narrowed until one wrong step meant disappearing into the valley below. Snow buried the trail. Ice turned every stone into a trap. Some local tribes attacked us from above, hurling rocks onto men who couldn't even see their attackers. Every day we lost soldiers, not because they lacked courage, because nature simply didn't care. Then there were the elephants. History remembers them as symbols of power. I remember frightened animals trying to walk across frozen cliffs. They slipped, they panicked. Some never made it. Neither did many of my men. By the time we finally descended into Italy, I hadn't defeated Rome. I had barely survived the journey to reach her. The Romans weren't expecting me. Not here, not now. Imagine waking up to discover that the enemy you expected to arrive by sea had walked an army through one of the harshest mountain ranges in Europe. Panic spread. Rome rushed armies north. Finally. A battle I actually wanted. At the river Trebia. I lured them across freezing water, cold, hungry, exhausted, exactly how I didn't want my own soldiers to be. Then I struck. It was a decisive victory. For the first time, Rome realized something terrifying. I wasn't just invading Italy. I intended to stay. After Trebia, Rome did what Rome always did. They built another army, so I gave them another defeat. Near Lake Trasimene, I found the perfect battlefield. Mist covered the lake. Hills hid my soldiers. The Romans marched forward, completely unaware they were walking into a trap. When the signal came, the hills came alive. Men who thought they were marching to battle suddenly realized they were surrounded. It wasn't a battle, it was an ambush, one of the largest the ancient world had ever seen. For the second time, one of Rome's finest armies ceased to exist. Surely now they would ask for peace. They didn't. Then came Cannae. If there is one day history remembers me, for it is this one, the Romans arrived with an army so large they believed numbers alone would crush me. On paper they should have. They outnumbered me. They had more infantry, more confidence, probably better breakfast. So I gave them exactly what they wanted. I let my center bend. Slowly, deliberately, my line began to fall back. The Romans cheered. They thought we were breaking. They pushed harder, deeper, exactly as I hoped. Then my veterans on the wings pivoted inward. My cavalry smashed into their rear, and in a matter of moments, the hunters became the hunted. The Roman army wasn't defeated. It was trapped, surrounded on every side. Ancient historians describe tens of thousands of Roman casualties that day, though the exact number is still debated. Whatever the true figure, one fact is beyond dispute. It was one of the greatest tactical victories in military history. I had done the impossible. I had broken Rome's greatest army. Surely this was enough. You'd think that would be the end of the story. It wasn't. I waited. Rome would negotiate. Any sensible nation would. Instead, they buried their dead, raised another army, appointed another commander, and carried on as though losing one of the greatest battles in their history was merely an inconvenience. That was the moment I finally understood my enemy. Rome wasn't unbeatable. Rome was unbreakable. You could destroy her armies. You could humble her generals. You could terrify her people. But you could not make her quit. And for the first time, I wondered whether I had mistaken winning battles for winning the war. The years passed. I remained in Italy, waiting, hoping, certain that Carthage would send the reinforcements I needed to finish the war. They never truly came. Not enough men, not enough money, not enough commitment. Every year Rome grew stronger. Every year my army grew smaller. For more than a decade, I kept Rome fighting on its own soil. Think about that one foreign army in Italy for over 15 years. And still, Rome refused to kneel. Eventually, the Romans stopped trying to defeat me. Instead, they attacked Carthage itself, home. For the first time in years, I had no choice. I had to leave Italy. Not because I had been beaten, because my city needed me. My final battle came at Zama, ironically against a Roman general who had spent years studying me. Publius Cornelius Scipio. The student had become the master. For the first time in my life, I stood on the losing side of history. The battle was over. The war was over. Rome had won, not because they had better generals, not because they had fought better battles, but because they endured longer than I did. Sometimes history doesn't belong to the most brilliant. It belongs to the last one standing. After the war, I lived as a statesman, then in exile. Eventually, Rome came for me one last time. They wanted to parade me through their streets. A trophy I refused. Instead, I chose my own ending. History remembers my victories. They remember me as one of history's greatest military commanders. It remembers Cannae, the elephants, the Alps, and the fear I brought to Rome. I won battles no one thought possible, fought a tactical war against an enemy that could never run out of men. But history rarely remembers the cost. A childhood bound by an oath. Brothers buried in foreign soil, an army that slowly disappeared, a homeland that abandoned me, and a lifetime spent running from the empire I could never defeat. My name is Hannibal Barca, and that is why it sucked to be me.